Welcome, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming, and it's that time. Siege just started a new season, and with that we get 2 new operators. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going over just the different stats of the operators, whether I like them or not, and whether or not they are worth it for you to purchase if you don't have the season pass. So, let's get right into this. Since this time around they are both attackers, I will just go with the first one on the list first, and that is Lion. He's a 2-speed, 2-armor attacker, and his special ability is the EE-1D. The EE-1D can scan for enemy movement at his command. If any defender moves while the EE-1D is scanning, then the drone will detect their movement, and you will actually get a red outline that all the attackers can see even through walls. So this can help you kind of find some of the roamers if they're running around the place. Defenders, if they are in the objective but still trying to run around, they can also be spotted. Just note that even Tachanka, when he's moving around his turret, even though he's technically moving, he also doesn't get picked up by the E1D, and if an defender is near a mute jammer, they will also not be picked up by the E1D scan. Now, let's move on to Lion's weapons. Now, since both of these guys are technically in units that are already in the game, they do have some overlapping weapons, so I will only be talking about the new weapons that they add to the game. And for Lion, he only adds one new weapon, the V308 Assault Rifle. Now, if you have used Chimera before, this weapon will look very familiar. This is a long-barreled version of her Vector, and it also has a higher capacity magazine. It has a 50-round drum on it. As for actual stats, this weapon's damage starts out at 44 until it gets down to 30 meters away, where it drops off to 25. If it's suppressed, it starts out at 37, and at 30 meters, it drops down to 21 damage a bullet. Its rate of fire is 850, and like I already said, it has a 50-round magazine, and in normal gameplay, you have 3 extra magazines with you. It also includes all the standard weapon attachments that you would find for an attacker. Personally, I like using an ACOG, a suppressor, and a vertical grip on this, as I found that that gives it pretty much no recoil if you control it just a little bit, and it lets you take down an attacker very, very quickly. Now, personally, I really like Lion. His gun is really fun to use, but his ability isn't nearly as useful as I thought it would be before I got to play him a bit. It really takes a special sort of circumstance for his E1D to be extremely useful, such as when the whole team is rushing the objective at one time. Other than that, he really requires somebody else like Fuse or Jackal to really help him go above and beyond just the other average operator. And even though I've been playing him all week, there's only been one time where his ability has actually been the deciding factor in a round, and I thought that that would come into play a lot more, but it really doesn't as much as most people think it would. Overall, I would say that Lion is just an average operator who has a slightly above average gun. Like I said, his gun's really, really good, but his ability with the E1D is not nearly as effective or as useful as most people think it will be. Next, let's move on to Finka. She's also an attacking 2-speed, 2-armor operator, and her special ability is the Adrenal Surge. It lasts for 20 seconds and has a 20-second cooldown, and when you activate it, every single member of your team gets a temporary 20 health buff, has their recoil reduced when they're aiming down sights by 45%, time to ADS is cut in half, reload time is reduced by 15%, movement through barbed wire is increased by 40%, and it reduces effects of blinding gadgets like stun grenades or Ying's Candelas by 50%, and it also reduces the effects of concussion gadgets like Ella's Gersmont mines and Zophia's concussion grenades by 70%. It can also be used on downed allies, reviving them with 5 health, alongside the temporary 20 health boost that you get just by activating it. And so, as you can hear, it's kind of powerful. And this is definitely the better of the two gadgets that these two operators have. This gadget comes into effect and is a major game changer pretty much almost every single round that it's used. It is an extremely helpful ability. Although with all that upside, there is a few downsides, although all of these are situational. Echo's yokai can use its ultrasonic blast to completely halt an active adrenal surge. Pulse's cardiac sensor can see you from farther away. Normally, he can only see you for 9 meters away, but with adrenal surge, he can see you up to 14 meters away. And if you're facing against a smoke, well, you get to take double damage because your operator's breathing harder and faster. So those are your kind of offsets. It also can't help up a player who's downed by one of Frost's welcome mats, but those is pretty situational downsides for a whole bunch of upsides. Now, just like Lion, Finka is using a whole bunch of weapons that are already in the game. She also only introduces one new weapon, which is the Spear 308 assault rifle. Now let's go over the Spear 308's stats. It has a 30-round magazine. Its damage starts out at 40 and decreases up until 35 meters, where it goes down to 25. If it's suppressed, it starts out at 34 and goes down until 35 meters. It is 21. It also has a rate of fire of 780 rounds per minute, and much like all other assault rifles, it has all the standard weapon attachments. Personally, I like going with a red dot sight, a suppressor, and a vertical grip. And I'll explain why pretty much right now. This gun has a bit of recoil, but not in the way that you would expect. During my time with the Spear 308, I found something very weird going on with the sights. If I'm using an ACOG sight, it has actually quite a bit of recoil and it likes to jump around a lot. But if I'm using the red dot sight, the holographic sight, or the reflex sight, it's almost dead on up until a very scary distance. And so I don't really know what's going on, but I've just personally been a lot more accurate with my shots when I don't have an ACOG on this. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing the same thing. Please leave a comment if you are, or if you think I'm just completely crazy with this. And now that I've gone over the stats of both of the new operators, I will kind of go over some general thoughts about both of them. And the first thing is actually sort of a design change that they've had with these two. These are the first two operators that really have like a non-direct ability, which by that I mean they don't have to be right up next to whatever they're doing to actually be useful. Like, you could be anywhere on the map with Finka, and her adrenal surge will still affect everybody else. Where if she had to be more direct with it, she'd probably have like a gun similar to how Doc does, where he'd have to shoot his teammates. But Finka can just be anywhere and activate it. And Lion also doesn't have to be anywhere near the enemies to activate his drone, and his drone scans the entire map at once. He doesn't have to be focused on any certain area. So this is definitely a bit of a design change, and I'm interested to see if they continue bringing out operators like this where you don't have to be right up in wherever you're doing to actually be useful. And I wonder if they just continue in this, because that could definitely change the way that the game's played if you have more hands-off operators. Something else that's kind of interesting is neither of these operators really like going up like directly into the fight. These are both like fairly support characters where you're supporting the rest of your team, even though they're both very good and they both have very good weapons. I see these both as more support roles. than right up in the front lines. So now that we've gone over all of that, let's answer the question that this video is here to answer, whether or not it is worth it to buy Finka and Lion. Personally, I think they're both amazing operators that you should get eventually. I think that Finka is a lot more useful than Lion, and that her ability will come into play more often than Lion, but both of their abilities are very good, and they're both very good characters that I would get sooner than later. Personally, I would get Finka first, just because her ability is so much better than Lion's, but both of these are operators worth getting. So that has been it for this. If you have any questions or comments about the new operators or about Siege in general, just leave them in the comments. As always, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming, and I will see you guys in the next one.